Welcome to Too Good to Be True, an investigative podcast about exposing the scams, schemes, and financial cults trying to separate you from your money.
Welcome back to Too Good to Be True. I am your co-host, journalist and drag artist Ryan Houlihan.
And I am Julia Lorenz Olson. I'm an accredited financial counselor and the co-creator of 2 Cents on PBS.
So we have kind of an unexpected topic today.
Okay.
I want to talk to you about video games. Really, we're going to be talking about one very specific kind of video game that I cannot stand. And I know what I'm talking about. I used to be the senior video game editor at a tech and fashion magazine that I co-founded a few years ago. And I've gotten a really up close and personal look at the gaming industry. And I think what you might find out in the next hour about games that are quote unquote free is going to curl your hair. If you're a new gamer, you might not know about this. And if you're a seasoned gamer, you still might not know the depths of this.
Do you know you are talking to like the newest video gamer?
Really?
Although that is maybe way too generous.
What do you play? I know everyone who plays a game is a gamer.
So my husband, just to give you like a little bit of context. So while he was growing up, he was completely barred from playing.
Always sucked to be that kid.
So when he grew up, of course, all he wanted to do was play video games. And then like we've been married for 16 years. And I remember like in the early couple of years, he would like stay up late. And I'm like, what are you doing? I just do not understand this.
He's so angry at the television.
I know. I'm like, what? Who's this? Why are you in this magical world? Anyway, but only a few months ago, we decided to get a Nintendo Switch.
Yay!
And he was like, listen, I really think you would love Mario Kart. And I was like, I don't know. And now I'm like on it. My thumb is smashing that little A. And get this, my 4-year-old daughter is playing with us. So we try and do it as like a family thing.
Yeah.
And trying to teach a 4-year-old how to do this is hilarious, but we all have fun, and that's the point.
Yeah, and that's the kind of gaming I would really encourage you and encourage anyone out there who's looking to get into gaming to get into. You know, it's the kind of game that you traditionally think of. You purchase a title, you play the game.
Yeah, it was like $80 or something.
Yeah, they're
I was
expensive.
like, say what?
But really what's driven the growth of gaming is not these high quality AAA published titles from Nintendo. And it's not the people who are, working on their dream projects since college and publishing it to Steam and it's a visual novel. Those aren't not the people expanding, really. You're outside of the curve. Really, the thing pushing the growth of video games for the last decade are free-to-play iPhone and Android games.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I have heard of these on every podcast ever being advertised.
Yeah, they have very targeted marketing and they have very exploitative business practices, which have led to their success, even though, of course, they say they're giving their product away for free.
Wait a second. Are you telling me that it's too good to be true, that these games are actually not free?
In fact, I may be.
Damn it. Curses.
So what a free-to-play game is, let's talk a little bit about.
Yeah.
A free-to-play game is any game that is free-to-play. So you've got Candy Crush, but you've also got Roblox.
Okay, I've heard of these things.
Fortnite.
Yeah.
These are games that let you download the game and play with other players and presumably play indefinitely without spending any money. According to Techopedia, quote, free-to-play games center around gamers' willingness to purchase items or pay for access to new content once they have tried out the game and become familiar with its mechanics. The idea of purchasing new content after playing a game, such as access to new areas or characters or levels, allows designers to create many games on the same platform and then focus on expanding those versions, thus producing in-game purchases and revenue. Free-to-play games contrast sharply with the primary model that preceded it, which is called pay-to-play, unquote. I mean, there's a reason stores don't charge for people to come into their business. Generally, they let you come in and shop around.
Oh, that's a great metaphor.
So these games base their entire business strategy around exploiting people once they're in the door. So they use lots of tactics borrowed from different addicting forms of substances, or more specifically, gambling.
Well, like casinos. Yeah, it's like a digital casino.
Yeah, basically. And it's not hard to understand why a digital casino can print money faster than the latest Kirby game. Nintendo itself is a company that's entire image is basically predicated on being safe, family-friendly, and wholesome. And they have multiple of these games available on iOS and Android. And they use all the practices that are common around the rest of the industry in your Candy Crushes, in Raid Shadow Legends. They all use the same methods, and Nintendo uses them too in these deceptive apps, which can look like any other game. Obviously, they're free to play, but usually they'll have several kinds of in-game currencies or timed events, which means you need to be playing the game when they want you to play the game and not playing the game when they don't want you playing the game, so that you crave the game. Or they'll do special events where celebrities cameo for only a specific window or an extra charge. Or they have cosmetics that you need to purchase in order to look different. To discuss free-to-play games and the current state of the gaming industry, we got to speak to Quentin Smith, who is a reporter over at People Make Games, which is a British investigative video game journalism YouTube channel that reports on labor issues and exploitation in the industry. They do excellent work, and it is an honor to have Quentin here to tell us a bit about how we got where we are.
It's so weird that video games are so popular and so beloved, and then suddenly the iPhone completely changes computing. Now everyone has a phone. It felt like there was a window in the history of video games where when phones came out and got popular, suddenly the whole video games industry is like, oh my goodness, the phone is going to be the next great console. It's going to be the shared experience where we all experience transformative, artistic, emotional, moving video games. It's going to be the new frontier. And then Google and Apple just dropped the ball. They just did not care. I mean, maybe they didn't drop the ball. They're still making money, right? But they just didn't care about curation. And all the mobile game stores just turned into essentially some weird hybrid between a casino and a video game. And it's awful. The demographics that I think people would expect these games to go for are more casual gamers. That means, a lot of women. It means a lot of older gamers. But actually, the demographic that most free-to-play games are going after is what used to be called whales. You might call them high rollers in a casino. Some big free-to-play companies get between 60 to 80% of their revenue from a very small group of what are now called VIPs who will spend thousands or tens of thousands of dollars on your free-to-play game in a year.
So yeah, these games rose to popularity because Apple and Google didn't do a really good job of curating their app stores for anything other than profitability. And in fact, both of those companies encouraged video game makers to give away their product for free. The interesting thing about free-to-play games, though, is that while there are free-to-play or free-to-get-started gambling websites, with free-to-play games, generally when you put money into them for, say, a microtransaction to buy you a cosmetic for your character, or coins because there's an in-game currency that you need to purchase something with,
of course,
you can never get it out. So you put money into I would say almost all of these games. There's a complete, total exceptions to the rule that exists specifically to be we're the only game that you can maybe get money out of. But the vast majority of the time you put money into Pokemon Go, you get Pokemon.
Yeah, so it's not like Venmo. I put something in and it stays there and I can get money back out.
Nope. But there is a long and pretty good history of purchasing in-game items before any of this went down. Historically, the reason that developers love free-to-play is that video games are really expensive to develop. And so originally, before free-to-play really got started, companies would create video games and they were good enough base experiences. And then they would sell you additional chapters within those games so that they could put more time into development or decide which resources to allocate. So if a game was really popular, you could make additional levels and stories that maybe you were going to include, but you didn't have the money for.
Even in Mario Kart, they're there's new tracks. And I'm yes, I want those new tracks.
And that kind of seems still a little fair because you knew what you were getting when you paid paid for it.
And
now
I
they're
have
just
access
offering
to
more.
plenty of other things that, I've already paid for. And
And then that started to evolve into loot boxes where you would buy a random assortment of stuff
heard of these
for a standard price.
So I think this is an interesting sort of like brain chemistry that we have. So our brains actually really love unpredictable rewards. So just like slot machines, the dopamine rush that you get when you get a surprise reward is a lot more intense than when like you're getting a reward. And it's like, oh, this is a gift. I know I'm getting a gift, and I open it up, but if it just kind of like comes out of nowhere, the dopamine levels are much higher. So
in the pursuit of finding somebody to bleed dry, they have a variety of these mechanics to try, because the truth is each of these tricks is only going to work on a certain portion of customers. So what they're really doing when they exploit that is different checkpoints within the game are going to require you to pay different amounts of money. So say, for example, the game allows you to play one level with all your friends in one outfit. Each of those limits is now a checkpoint where they can say, oh, did you want new outfits? Oh, that's only a couple dollars. Oh, did you want to go to the other levels? That's only a couple dollars. Oh, did you say run out of space in your friends list? Well, the way we're monetizing our game is to charge you for having friends.
oh my gosh.
Wired wrote a piece about a study into these methods entitled, "It's Not Just Loot Boxes, Predatory Monetization is Everywhere," that reads, quote, "The study found 35 different techniques over 8 domains. Game dynamics designed to drive spending, product not meeting expectations, monetization of basic quality of life, predatory advertising, in-game currency, pay-to-win mechanics, general presence of microtransactions, and others. The examples, several of which run afoul of UK consumer protection regulations, are numerous. Gamers cited aggressive advertising in Candy Crush that targets them when they cannot quite complete a level, or inventory space limits in Fallout 76 and Elder Scrolls Online that makes it difficult to enjoy the game," unquote. For more about this, let's listen to a clip from the YouTube channel Side Projects. That's youtube.com/@sideprojects, who made a video called "The Science and Psychology Behind Free-to-Play Games."
Exploiting brain chemistry is the most fundamental part to how free-to-play games work. Dopamine is the chemical in our brain that makes us feel good, and is released during pleasurable activities or events. And most importantly, for things like predatory loot boxes, surges of dopamine levels are present in the moments leading up to a possible reward. In short, our brains are programmed to make us feel good about gambling and the possibility of winning. Dopamine does more than just make people feel good, however. It is crucial for habit forming, and it is fundamental in learning, exploring, and seeking out novel experiences. It is an extremely powerful chemical in terms of controlling a person's behavior, as triggering the brain to release dopamine is addictive, something that free-to-play games prey on. Because dopamine also makes our brains want to seek out novelty, it increases the likelihood that a person would engage in riskier behavior. For example, drugs that treat Parkinson's disease by increasing dopamine levels have the potential side effect of causing compulsive gambling, the exact sort of behavior these game developers are seeking out. By introducing random elements, it suddenly becomes exciting, with our brains releasing dopamine in anticipation of these rewards, and again, upon receiving them.
If people are dependent on a brain chemical to function, really, they'll give you anything you like. And so basically anything you can do to capture that audience and make them dependent can be financially justified. So unless someone like a government steps in to intervene, we have companies incentivized to create a world where we have a portal, several floating around your house to exploitative casinos, essentially.
It's just basically a digital casino, or like an arcade, right? Where when you run out of quarters, you just couldn't play anymore, right? Well, a credit card is not quarters.
So, for example, there was one little girl named Lily Neal. According to the grunge.com article, she managed to charge $6,000 in around 5 months, with a whopping 74 of those charges coming in a single 6-day span. It's really easy to miss the occasional charge on your credit card, especially because we are so inundated with streaming services. I mean, charges from the App Store that may not say
it just
what
says Apple, and you're just like, well, I guess I bought it, you know?
Yeah, what do they changed the price of Apple's music subscription, so maybe it's that. Now I've got Apple TV. And even with video games, a lot of parents are into video games. So
That makes sense.
are used to seeing Xbox or Microsoft charges, and they might not question it. But it's entirely subjective if these companies will refund your purchases.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, is there a way to try and fight something like this if you find yourself in that position?
There are some ways, but they're entirely up to those companies. In their terms of service, they do not have to reverse those charges, and very frequently they don't.
Can I charge my child with fraud?
Well, it's crazy too, because it's not like you're authorizing these credit card uses.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. It's like, I'm not authorizing these, but I mean, I can understand in like a legal context. It's like, you put your thing in there, you gave your, consent that she should play. Like, this is on you. I can totally see it being framed like that. Sweet Lily, like, were they able to get their money back?
According to this grunge.com piece, the Neals were faced with having to sell a few vehicles to cover the cost of Lily's purchase.
Oh my God.
That was after Apple initially refused to give them a refund, but finally Neal told his story to the media, and then Apple caved. So no word on whether or not they're getting their vehicles back. But even if you were to get a concession from a company like this, it can be financially devastating to wait for it. These situations have led to a ton of lawsuits, but in order to bring a lawsuit to a company like this, you need a lot of resources.
Yeah.
And they're so incentivized to protect these developers, because these developers make up the bulk of the gaming industry today.
So since it seems like as of now, there's no real legal precedent for people like her parents to be able to come back after, these companies that allow their children to charge up all these cards. What is left? Like, the legal system has failed us. So it seems like our only option is hopefully regulation, but like,
regulation would be great if we could get a Congress together that could pass some, and a president who would be willing to rein in massively financially motivated corporations. I haven't seen one in a while, but if we do see those things hanging around, that would be great.
I did see when I was looking into this topic that there are legislatures in some states and even other countries around the world that have considered regulating specifically loot boxes.
Yes,
because they're such a very obvious form of gambling. And especially now, this blew my mind. These secondary markets have sprung up where people can sell the rarer contents of these boxes for hundreds or thousands of real dollars. I had no idea. There's whole YouTube channels of people opening loot boxes and figuring out what's inside, like a thrift haul or something like that. This is where maybe we might have some purchase.
Very similar to how gambling companies hire influencers to do gambling streams mixed in with their gaming streams. A lot of these companies will pay to mix their free-to-play product into other forms of media that might not be about such exploitative stuff. So you've got influencers hawking free-to-play games to young demographics coupled with children's content. And basic regulation that could put rules around what we advertise to children on the internet, basic guidelines would go a really long way. And it might be something that we can pass, similar to loot boxes, that it's easy for people to understand. It's easy to say it's wrong, and it's not like these companies don't have other alternative means for making money.
That's what I'm saying. It's you have other ways of making your money. It's not anti-capitalist if you're okay, this one very, very egregious form that you were doing, how about we just put that off the table?
Yeah. Our guest Quentin actually broke this story to the wider internet over at youtube.com/@peoplemakegames in a video titled, quote, "How Valve is Profiting from Steam's Backdoor Casinos." Here's Quentin to discuss the use of in-game items or downloadable content called DLC as unregulated financial assets, and what that lack of regulation means for the future.
As is so often the case in sort of emerging tech markets, I think governments are crazy behind the eight ball in a lack of regulation around free-to-play games because, to some extent, this is the perfect evolution of gambling because if you lose money, and if you win, you don't get any money from the people playing the game. You get a digital asset, like a T-shirt for your avatar or something. But nonetheless, these games are tremendously addictive. I did a video on YouTube a while back looking at the world of people who are addicted to getting it's not even different guns in an online shooting game. It's actually what's called skins for your gun. So things that make your gun look pretty. And the video game developer behind this has made that process of acquiring all these skins so desirable that people get into incredible debt. You know, I'm talking about ending up tens of thousands of dollars in debt, not even because they were pursuing a big cash windfall, but because they were pursuing something that would make them look cool while they were playing an online shooter. When I describe this, that might sound quite similar to cryptocurrency, right? You know, this idea that you have a digital asset that doesn't really exist, but becomes more valuable. That is something we see not just in this idea of digital currencies, like, you know, Bitcoin and whatever. It's something we also see in certain free-to-play video games like Roblox or Counter-Strike Global Offensive, where not only can you acquire these, you know, like skins or digital assets that make your avatar look cool as you're running around and having fun, you can then sometimes sell those assets that you've won to other players, at which point you start getting into this very hairy, weird world where, you know, the t-shirt that your avatar wears has a resale value, which makes it kind of similar to a fraction of a Bitcoin, which makes it kind of similar to fiat currency. But all of this is happening in a completely unregulated space because this is, in the eyes of governments, just video games. And like, we are so far beyond that now. And when we're talking about a lack of regulation in this space, we're not just talking about governments saying, you know, like certain business practices should be illegal or whatever. More importantly, there is no age limit on any of this. So, you know, you might say that someone who's 21 and walks into a casino and loses $100, well, they had that coming. They should have known better. But we're talking about, you know, a 10-year-old who logs onto Roblox with $20 in digital currency that their parents have given them and losing that $20 because they aren't even aware of what's happening to them. They're not even aware of, you know, how casinos or video games can manipulate them into separating them from their money. The thing I would love to stress on this podcast is that we are currently in a very dark moment in the video games industry where slowly, like in a glacial pace across decades, more and more and more lessons from the heavily regulated casino and gambling and betting industry are being brought into video games.
Hey guys, it's Chelsea here, and I'm just popping in to let you know about the Society at TFD, our exclusive members-only community available to join here on our YouTube channel, as well as on Patreon. If you want to support TFD and the special projects we work on, like fan-favorite podcast Too Good to Be True, we'd love for you to join. Giving to TFD directly is the best way to ensure that we can keep making the content you most want from us. The Society is available both on YouTube and Patreon, and before you ask, the membership offerings are very similar on both platforms, so you only need to join one. Some people prefer YouTube, so join us there. Prefer Patreon? Join us there. And since you guys have been asking for clarification, here's a breakdown of what you guys get for each tier on each platform. On YouTube, our membership tiers are $2.99 and $4.99. For $2.99, you get loyalty badges and moan emojis on YouTube, 40% off TFD digital events, monthly office hours with Chelsea, access to our Discord community, access to our monthly book club, and access to our questions answered by me or guests on the Financial Confessions. For $4.99, you get everything from the $2.99 tier, plus exclusive ad-free videos each month where you can catch me rant about Dave Ramsey, TikTok face, girl bossing, Goop, and so much more. Entire backlog of ad-free bonus videos. 50% off TFD live digital events on everything from $12 workshops to $199 courses, priority access to get your questions answered by me or guests on the Financial Confessions. And over on Patreon, our tiers are $7 and $12. For $7 a month, you get exclusive ad-free videos each month, our entire backlog of ad-free bonus videos, 50% off TFD live digital events on everything from $12 workshops to $199 courses, monthly office hours with Chelsea, access to our Discord community, access to our book club, automatic enrollment in exclusive Patreon-only newsletters, priority voting on the monthly book club selection, and priority access to get your questions answered by me or guests on the Financial Confessions. For $12, you get everything from the $7 level, plus our weekly Ask TFD Anything newsletter, where you get your personal questions answered by the TFD team. No topic is too small or too big to ask. The Society has something for everyone, so click the link in the description of this episode to join us on your preferred platform.
So all of this is currently moving at breakneck speed. When we're talking about it right here, when you're hearing about it, there's probably new kinds of games coming out that are doing new and exciting forms of exploitation.
New and exciting.
Innovating, really.
Innovation on exploitation.
And I'm not here to say that free to play is a model that should forever never work. Like, certainly giving people free samples of things, game demos, these are a long tradition in the gaming industry. And I understand the impulse to have someone download a whole game, let them play a bit of it and say, well, if you want the rest, you can instantly access it.
That's right.
I get it. And I understand it's going to be hard to eliminate those things. But I think we can really section that kind of ethical way of attempting to sell a product from the kind of exploitation and psychological manipulation tactics. I think that there's like a clear divider.
Very much so. It seems I feel like I would be very hard pressed to find people just normal people who would be on the side of these companies. It just seems crazy.
Yeah. But then I don't know what to tell people from there because it just keeps getting worse and mutating. You really have to learn how these devices work. Unfortunately, you really have to stay on top of parental controls and purchase controls. The only kind of bulwark you have in your control besides voting,
yes,
or abstaining from this stuff entirely, which is now pretty like standard issue requirement for most Americans to get through their lives, apps. You have to really try to stay educated on it, and you have to be suspicious even of brands you are friendly with. Or brands who are charging, but just a little bit. So like Disney has a free game called Dreamlight Valley. It will be free. Right now they're charging for it for Disney adults who will pay for the price.
Oh my
But
God.
it is a free to play game with exploitative models in it. And it is fronted by Mickey Mouse. And they are charging for it right now. They won't always be. But after they've seeded people into saying they like it and those people have helped them improve the product, they'll give it to kids for free. And a Disney World in your pocket sounds really great for every kid.
Fantastic.
And to the Walt Disney Company, creating, managing, and distributing this game is worth it to them, as long as they get access to that tiny minority of whales.
And something tells me these whales are more like calves.
So that is a very good point. Most of the people who get caught in this, like the little girl we discussed earlier, if they're not adults who are at a disadvantage, maybe educationally about this topic, they're children who have no way of avoiding the manipulations of advertising. If you remember what Nickelodeon commercials did to kids' brains, think about what a handheld version that knows a ton of information about you, that's interactive, could get a kid to covet. Young people tend to gravitate towards video games, not just because they're attractive, not just because of the advertising, but also because of the social pressure. Mm-hmm. And you have 12% of young American adolescents being described by a study published in Behavioral Sciences in 2015 as pathological video gamers.
Oh my gosh.
Because even as children, they are having addiction-like symptoms similar to substances and intoxication.
Oh my gosh.
Here's a quote from neurohealth at nhahealth.com. For Seattle-based psychotherapist Dr. George Lynn, 80% of his patients' issues stem from too much gaming, including watching too many videos online or excessively using social media. As a result, Dr. Lynn is witnessing, quote, a personality syndrome that comes from basically unbridled, uncontrolled use of recreational use of screen media during the day and at night.
I mean, of course, and to be fair, I mean, as a parent, I can just tell you, raising kids is so hard. It's so hard. The level of personal engagement and mental creativity you have to bring to the game if you want to do any sort of a good job, it is so easy and very tempting to be like, listen, I need 15 minutes of you not talking to me.
Yeah.
Here you go, right? And my mother, I mean, there wasn't anything necessarily on the TV that I would have even want to watch, right? So, I mean, I feel for us, but it is obviously creating, I think it's the boundaryless usage. I think that's a major problem.
So you have people who are using screens as replacements for childcare 100%, not just
true.
because it's convenient, but because we don't have built-in childcare.
No, we
in our
don't.
society. And the reason that, I mean, even if you're a parent who's on top of things and you're tech savvy, they changed the policies and the settings and the interfaces of these devices often enough that you're going to have to learn a few versions of it during your child's lifetime and be aware of when you need to set new restrictions. And this isn't even the worst of it. Beyond hiding from regulation and using market penetration to hunt down that small percentage of highly exploitable victims with access to a lot of capital, on the back of that, not only do these companies have people paying them, some of these companies have their fan bases working for them for free.
Say more on that.
You have companies like Roblox who create an app that's free for kids to play.
This is all I know. I know that Roblox is like a kid's thing. That is literally all I know about it.
So originally there was a game called Minecraft, and that was a world in which you could build anything if you mined the resources and then built it. So you see people build these beautiful recreations of the Eiffel Tower, and it's made out of Minecraft bricks like Legos. And sometimes they get them so big and so complicated that you can zoom out and you don't even see the bricks. And they had to do all this work to build that. And kids, of course, are attracted to Legos and Kinects and clay and Lincoln Logs. And a digital version of that is really fun. Roblox piggybacked on that genre and said, we're a game that gives you all these tools to make your own fun, make your own games, do whatever you want. So they have kids who are working as game developers, creating games for other kids it's introduced as a recreational activity, but what it in fact does is create content that company, it's like a social media company more than it is like a gaming company. But on top of that, even kids can make money from this Roblox thing. So it quickly becomes a job. Or you're paying for content. And this is on kids. And frankly, I'm not comfortable with the amount of free content I gave Twitter. And that's a very different calculation.
Yeah.
And so for kids to get used to this idea that in order to access their friends or fun, they need to be able to pay or work for free is awful. A really ugly precedent to establish.
Absolutely.
And not that it should matter, but this isn't happening in some far-flung foreign locale. These are American students who are working for free for a corporation as game devs. Quinton Smith from People Make Games also broke this topic into the mainstream with a video entitled Investigation: How Roblox is Exploiting Young Game Developers. Here he is with some updated thoughts on this sick economic cycle.
And I think what's really disturbing about all of this is there is no way for parents to keep up on this, even if they're gamers, because all too often the games that, adults who have their own money play tend to be very different to the games that children play. So Roblox, which is now by some metrics the most popular video game in the world, is something that is almost exclusively played by children and was described by internet culture journalist Ryan Broderick as like video games, but worse. Roblox is entirely free, but then tries to nickel and dime these kids out of however much money they have. But Roblox has this very peculiar business model that the makers of Roblox are able to frame as a very good and creative and skill building thing, because Roblox isn't actually, strictly speaking, a video game. It's a platform which hosts video games that you yourself can design. So Roblox pitches itself as a platform where kids can make games for other kids. That sounds great, right? But the thing is that Roblox is a platform that exclusively hosts free-to-play games. So if you're a kid who wants to make money making video games on Roblox, then you're not just making, the next Super Mario, which is not a free-to-play game. You're essentially trying to come up with something that acts a little bit like a casino. So yes, Roblox is teaching kids how to make video games, but it's teaching them how to make some of the most despicable and manipulative video games around.
I don't know. I feel sick to my stomach sort of thinking about that. And, I have my own young daughter. She's 4, almost 5. And it's crazy how integrated technology already is in her life, like in general. And we don't even we never hand her our phone to watch something, but she knows that when I say I'm going to have a call with somebody, she looks at the phone like it's a screen. She doesn't put it up to her ear, right? She's going to interact with technology in a way that's going to seem almost innate, instinctual, whereas I had to learn this, right?
Well, it's a generation of people that have such a different relationship with technology that not only are they more versed in how to make it get what they desire. Like they know how to enter credit card numbers and fill out menus and stuff. Their parents don't have any familiarity or memory of doing that as a risk originally. So it's not like where you're like, when you leave the house, oh, I remember scraping my knee.
Yeah, like Oregon Trail, like when my oxen died, I didn't have like my credit card.
And a lot of people don't want to learn it because they like these games. A lot of people are really motivated to defend these games because of the sunk cost fallacy. So if you're a millennial and you've collected every Pokemon in Pokemon Go and you've done all this exercise for it and your friends are on it and you've put maybe some money in it, maybe even $200 over the course of several years, you're going to defend that app. You're going to come up with reasons why it's not the app's fault because you're forming a parasocial relationship, not just with the app, but with all the people in the app. So based on your adult experiences, it's just a fun way to go for a walk, talk to some friends, and catch Pokemon. That's kind of what many parents know about phone games. How could you know when you became a parent to get a degree in how children could get access to tiny casinos learning lessons about gambling?
Yeah.
And frankly, they shouldn't have to.
Well, what it really feels is kind of like the new version of the tobacco industry.
Yeah.
Where they're like willfully and knowingly targeting a vulnerable demographic until they're essentially forced to stop. And even then it's like, you're already, trying to swim upstream.
But unlike with cigarettes, you can just not smoke. This isn't really going anywhere. You have to have a phone. And if you're a kid, I mean, even if you're not, are you supposed to be on defense whenever you get entertainment?
Play is a need. We as human beings, in order to thrive physically, mentally, we need play. And so it is being offered to us in this very slick, very almost like frictionless package, right? It's like all you need to stimulate those parts of your brain that are there for evolutionary reasons. I mean, it's right here. So easy. And yeah, I mean, in New York here, I've tried to spend a big part of every day in Central Park. And I can't tell you how many kids I just see on devices. And I'm like, look around you. Look at these kids playing, running around. Like, that's why you're in a park, not to just like turn off, but it's addictive. And these kids can't be expected to know that or have any sort of self-awareness, right?
Or have a concept of play or even gaming. Gaming is not an objectively bad thing. Studies have shown across the board that even violence in video games does not have a negative impact in kids' development.
Wow.
But what does is gambling and being emotionally manipulated.
Mm-hmm.
And what does is an association between economics and fun that you cannot break. At least when you're a kid, it's the one time
so
when
true.
it doesn't cost you money to relax. Or it shouldn't. It shouldn't cost anybody.
No.
But especially a child who's developing. And the idea of a kid at the park and being left to run around as a relief for parents. If you knew that park was filled with hucksters and scam artists, you wouldn't necessarily push them into it as a way to waste time. But you can't see it. It's not tangible.
Yeah. Okay, so what you're telling me is basically, I just need to be okay with making my child a pariah. That's where I'm at.
Basically, you have to like create alternative ways for your kids to socialize.
I mean,
it's a part-time job.
I mean, I'm, it seems like maybe I'm saying that facetiously, but honestly, I'm not. I think we are at a place where, and we've discovered this in other episodes that we've done, capitalism is running haywire now through our children's lives every day. And in order to try and keep them some level of safe, it is going to require me, I'm talking to myself, me as a parent, to hold a line. It is okay to say, no, you may not have that, and offer some sort of other alternative. Because I know my kid is going to come at me and want something like this. I know. So I need to be prepared with a healthy alternative, right?
Yeah. And it's okay to sit down and explain to kids too, like why these apps are different.
Yeah.
Because I think people think kids can't understand being tricked or exploitation or any of these things, or we all have that super immature opinion that once we know about it, we won't be tricked.
Oh, that's, I think, right there.
So you can explain to your kids too stories of things that have happened to other kids in the news, real stories, not exaggerations. You can tell them what the kind of times you felt fooled by apps, because I certainly have been fooled by apps. I put money into Pokemon Go when I was bored in 2016.
Yeah.
And I wish that I hadn't done that, but...
And I think you, as a parent, before you give them pretty much any media, you need to fully taste test it yourself.
Yeah.
You need to try it out and be like, okay, let me put myself in like a 4-year-old mindset. Like, is what I'm seeing okay with me, right? Am I seeing ads pop up that might light up and look pretty or interesting?
And even those ads are different every time. So you might see Barbie Princess ad the first time, but the second time it could be Grandma Can't Stop Pooping. And you might not want your kid to be watching Grandma pooping content.
Grandma can't stop pooping.
Let's hear from Quentin one more time, who's got some advice for parents who might be feeling a little overwhelmed at this exact moment of listening to the show.
I think the simplest way for parents to avoid this is, and it sounds ridiculous, right? But to spend the $70 that Nintendo asks for their latest games. Because yes, that is a crazy outlay of cash, but what you get is an extremely high quality product, which when your kids go and play it, they are not thinking about money at all. They're just having fun. They're just playing, and they're experiencing some of the greatest game design that the most talented people on the planet can make. It's the point when I feel the proudest of video games. It's the point when they feel like an art form. And conversely, I know it seems so easy to sit your kid in front of a $0 game, but that game is designed to get you through the door, get you excited, and then frustrate the shit out of you. Say, hey, give us $5 and this frustration goes away. All of a sudden, you've got a kid pulling on your sleeve because they've already spent $70 on a game that's worse than the new Super Mario, and they need to spend another $70 just to keep playing. Video games can teach us skills. Surely they can teach us bad things as well. Generally, I think for parents trying to decide if video games are a good thing, it's impossible. You can't do it. You just have to look at every individual video game and say, is this a good thing for my child in this situation? And if that sounds like a lot of work, yep. It is. It's a nightmare. But there are a lot of video game developers out there who have built entire business models around the fact that parents don't have the time or sometimes don't have the interest in looking at what their kids are doing. And, you know, sometimes they're getting kids addicted to actual slot machines from as young as 12, 13 years old. So, yeah, I think this absolutely needs to be regulated by governments, but that's not going to happen. So until it does happen, I think parents do need to just pay attention to the kind of games their kids are playing. And if you don't understand those games, that's fine. I'm sure there are lots of people on the internet who will teach you about it if you do a post on Reddit or something. My kid is playing this, and should I be worried? And gamers will be very quick to say either yes or no. I think as a super rough rule of thumb that is definitely going to be wrong a lot of the time, if you look at the section of the App Store for phone games where you have to pay money to get access to the game, you know, because a lot of those games will be $3, $4, $5. Look at high-rated games when you pay money up front, and those games almost always are not games that then try and nickel and dime you with what are called microtransactions, which is the idea of this game costs $0, but then when you're in it, it's like, give us $1, give us another $1, give us another $1. So if you don't have time to figure out what games are good and bad, or who does, I think just focus on paying $3 or $4 for really high reviewed games or award-winning games as well that have a price out of the gate.
As someone who loves video games and grew up with them, there is a benefit to kids having to make their own fun, being bored, playing imagination games.
Yes.
And these apps really want to replace that. And what they want to replace it with is a really toxic thought pattern that you get imprinted with early. And if they get you hooked on fun as being part of one of these systems, you're going to have that association built for life.
If you're taught from this early an age that fun costs money, or like the best fun always costs money, where do you think that's going to lead?
So it's completely anecdotal, but I saw a TikTok the other day that was it was a video about 30 seconds of some boys outside. It was at such a distance, but they did not know how to play with each other. They were just kind of each talking and dancing a little, and they kept taking out their phones. And
No. Oh.
I'm not saying that that's what's happening across the country. I'm not saying no kid knows how to play imagination, but I do think this is part of a trend, and these predatory billion-dollar industries are pushing to minimize that part of childhood as much as possible. So while it's awful to end every one of these episodes by saying individual responsibility, right now,
Yeah.
your only line of defense is to get educated on this and to inoculate the people in your life who might just really want to play Candy Crush.
Yes.
Well, before we wrap this one up, I just want to take a second to thank our special guest. You can find more of Quinton Smith's work at youtube.com/@peoplemakegames or on Twitter @Quins108. That's QUINNS 108.
Well, on that note.
On that note, let's all put our phones away.
Yes.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you so much for hanging.